Today, we're going to go over the murder of Viv Graham, a notorious hardman and doorman from Newcastle in the United Kingdom.
On New Year's Eve 1993, at dusk, Viv Graham stepped out of the Queen's Head pub in Wallsend and climbed into his Ford Sierra Cosworth before driving away into the darkening evening. Moments later, a sudden burst of gunfire shattered the quiet streets and left him fatally wounded. This was not the plot of a crime thriller, but a real-life execution that has haunted Tyneside for more than 3 decades, leaving an indelible scar on the community. Viv Graham was not just another name in Newcastle's nightlife. He was a towering figure within the city's club scene. A former heavyweight boxer who later became a feared and respected bouncer, he established himself as the leader of a protection empire that extended across pubs and nightclubs throughout Tyneside. His presence shaped the energy of nightlife and the dynamics of the criminal underworld alike, where his influence was both commanding and undeniable.
A Nissan with blacked-out windows by a gang with pump-action shotguns outside Manhattan's nightclub in Newcastle. During the attack, Rob Armstrong was hit and required 60 pellets to be taken out of his body, but survived.
At around 6:10 in the evening, Graham climbed into his Cosworth. Only seconds later, a gunman waiting nearby opened fire. Struck 3 times at close range with a Magnum revolver, he somehow managed to drag his body back inside the pub, clinging to life with immense strength.
A £100,000 reward for information went unclaimed, and despite arrests, no one has ever been convicted.
Yet despite being rushed to the hospital, his injuries were too severe. He succumbed to his wounds roughly 4 hours later, leaving the city stunned and shaken. His brutal and public death shocked a community that was already familiar with violence, but rarely on such a calculated and cold scale.
Graham left the Queen's Head pub on Wallsend High Street around 6 p.m. to return to his car, which he had parked in a side street. Viv would go into a nearby shop to buy cigarettes.
Just hours before he was killed, Viv had reportedly received a chilling and deeply unsettling phone call that carried a death threat. To this day, no one knows whether the warning was one he chose to dismiss, or if he had simply gambled and lost in a game of power and rivalry. That unanswered question has lingered ever since, adding to the cloud of mystery surrounding the case.
At Durham Jail, while they awaited trial, the police were building a case which they hoped would take some of North East's most biggest names off the streets. It was a crazy time to be in jail. In April 1990, inmates at Strangeways Prison in Manchester began a 25-day rooftop protest.
Northumbria police responded with one of the largest investigations in the region's history. They carried out more than 1,000 interviews and made a series of arrests, yet not a single conviction was secured. Despite the massive effort, the case remains unsolved to this day. The failure to identify and prosecute the killer has become a stark reminder of how fear, silence, and criminal loyalties can protect those truly responsible.
If anything happens to me, I have a side for Viv to be removed. Rumours also swirled of drug barons from London, Manchester, or Liverpool, enraged by Viv's European-sourced ecstasy ring, hiring contract killers. Paddy Conroy, a rival to the Sayers, was a prime suspect.
The murder of Viv Graham did not conclude with his final breath. Instead, it triggered a wave of fear and turmoil across Newcastle. Control of the pubs he once dominated quickly shifted into new hands, while rival gangs moved aggressively to take over his lucrative territory. His death set off a period of instability, marked by dangerous power struggles that reshaped the underworld and deepened its violent reputation.
I've always stood my ground. This when these lads went to jail, when they went to jail, see when Viv come out doing a big market, they had get no party from in Macy's.
So what? So Viv got banged up as well?
Yeah.
How long did he?
Over 3 decades later, Viv's son, known as Viv Jr., has chosen to step into the public eye. He has participated in a BBC podcast, speaking openly about the difficulties of growing up without his father. He described hearing stories that painted his dad as both feared and respected, and he admitted that his own life has been permanently shaped by that absence. Now, as an adult, he calls for anyone with knowledge to come forward, hoping to bring long-awaited justice for his family, and especially for his aging grandmother.
And despite arrests, no one has ever been convicted. The case remains one of Northumbria Police's most enduring mysteries, a puzzle with missing pieces that still sparks debate among true crime fans. Was it a calculated hit by a criminal syndicate, a grudge from a scorned associate, or something even darker?
For many, Viv's death stood out not just for its violence, but also for the brazenness of its execution. It was a highly public assassination, carried out in broad daylight on one of the busiest nights of the entire year. The fact that such an ambush could take place at a time of communal celebration revealed how deeply violence had become woven into everyday existence in the region, where danger lurked even in moments meant for joy.
With Anna Connolly and her 5 children from a previous relationship. Graham acted as a stepfather to the children, and they in return viewed him as their father. When the party drug, ecstasy, landed in the late 1980s, it sparked vicious battles among the criminal underworld.
Viv's rise to power had been built on reputation and force. He earned his nickname through sheer strength, presence, and determination. From his beginnings as a village boy, he became known as the King of the Ring, carrying his boxing resilience into a business empire that controlled the gates of Newcastle's exploding nightlife scene. His ability to dictate who entered clubs and how they operated made him both influential and feared, solidifying his image as a man not to be crossed.
There was a time when his partner Anna tried to smuggle cannabis into the prison for him so he could sell it. He would take it from her and place it in his mouth. As he went to leave the visit, the guards caught him, leading to a desperate struggle, trying to pry open his mouth. Viv would start to fight them off while chewing until he managed to swallow it.
Before his murder, Viv had already experienced the consequences of his violent world. He served time in prison for a brutal attack on rival bouncer Stu Watson, an assault that had been caught in stark detail on CCTV. Even behind bars, he maintained his formidable reputation, once consuming a smuggled lump of cannabis so large that it reportedly caused him to sleep for days. He had even confided to his partner that he did not expect to live to see the age of 40, a haunting prediction that proved true.
Shortly before his death, a car drove past Mr. Graham's home, and one of the passengers leant out of the car and shot out the windows of his house. On Christmas Eve 1993, Mr. Graham was involved in another confrontation with another notorious gang in Newcastle.
On New Year's Day 1994, Tyneside awoke to headlines announcing his assassination. The city was consumed by tension, bracing for more violence and reprisals. Despite the scale of the police inquiry and the countless leads pursued, the investigation brought little closure, leaving the underworld to regroup and recalculate its future in cold and ruthless terms.
Viv, Stephen, and Michael Sayers and 3 others faced charges of violent disorder and wounding at Newcastle Crown Court. Judge Mary McMurray oversaw the case, with CCTV footage exposing the gang's brutality. Initially denying the charges, they eventually pleaded guilty to lesser counts of unlawful wounding.
The effects of Viv's murder rippled through his family as well. His brother Dean later died from a drug overdose, adding another tragic chapter to their story. His grandmother, now in her late 80s, still lives with the hope of one day seeing justice served. The generational trauma has carried forward, with grief and loss that continue to weigh heavily more than 30 years on.
Police launched a massive manhunt, interviewing 1,000 people, visiting 500 homes, and taking hundreds of statements. They saw a distinctive 5 feet 2 inches man with short mousy hair, wearing a long-sleeved dress shirt, seen leaving the Queen's Head minutes before the shooting. A burnt-out blue Ford Escort in Heaton, spotted near the crime scene, became a key lead, linked to a gangland hit. Witnesses, gripped by fear, stayed silent.
Northumbria police maintain that the case is still open. They periodically review it, looking for new opportunities to test evidence and follow leads. Detectives have emphasized that even the smallest tip could make a difference, and they continue to encourage the public to come forward. There remains a chance that justice might finally be possible, despite the long passage of time.
Viv Graham's murder on New Year's Eve, 1993, left Newcastle's nightlife in turmoil. Pubs grew quiet, tension hung heavy, and fear gripped owners and patrons alike. Without Viv's iron control, landlords like Peter Connolly faced threats from opportunists eyeing his territory.
The story of Viv Graham endures as a reminder of how violence, power, and legacy are tightly bound together. Without accountability, the pain of loss lingers across decades, leaving wounds that never fully close. This is not only a Tyneside tragedy, but also a call for truth, closure, and justice. His murder may remain unsolved, yet the search for answers and for peace continues to this day.